So a couple of years ago, my mother-in-law passed away, dear lady, who left behind her husband, my father-in-law, Fred, also a wonderful man, got on with incredibly well. Known Fred for 25 years, and for the last 20 years, I've been involved as his unofficial IT support provider. I guess not overly willingly, it's just sort of happened. It's one of those things. And Fred is very much an upstanding member of the community. He is involved in all kinds of aspects of charity and the like. And as a result, he's quite demanding when it comes to his IT requirements. He has a dozen email addresses, multiple devices, and he's also a terrible payer. He doesn't pay me a penny, unfortunately. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you'll all have a Fred in your life. About 6 weeks ago, he was sat at our kitchen table. I was upstairs in the office, and he called up and said, "Mark, I've got a problem. I'm unable to save any of my files to OneDrive. The apps aren't working." So I came downstairs, and I was, I guess, scratching my head a little bit. I wasn't overly sure what was going on. So I said, "Look, head home. This is Fred's home. Houses really do exist like this in the UK. A beautiful place." And I said, "Look, everything will be fine on your devices at home. There's something wrong with your laptop. But what we'll do is I'll come in remotely over the weekend, and we'll try and figure things out." So I went off to a customer meeting. Fred went home, and about 10:30 that Friday night, we had friends round, a few drinks, and I got a very short text from Fred just to say, "Look, Mark, nothing's working. I need your help." It was quite curt, to the point. I looked at it, picked up the phone, sort of put it down again, and went back to our friends. The following morning, I woke up, and if I'm honest, I was a little bit exasperated. I was getting a bit fed up with the constant request for IT support, and I spoke to my wife first of all. I said, before I spoke to a friend, said, "Look, what are we going to do with your dad? This is driving me insane. I don't know how to deal with this and keep dealing with his problems." And she took a pause, and she said, "Mark," she said, "it's really simple. He is absolutely petrified that he is about to lose all of the memories, all of the personal artifacts of his wife, her mum, all those hundreds and hundreds of photos taken over years. He is suddenly really concerned about." And when you see messages like that on your screen, I guess it's hardly surprising. And I paused. I really did. And the penny dropped, and I went, okay, yes, actually, this is not about IT support anymore. This is about human support. And it really made me think about this sort of unofficial service I provide to him. It's just not about the technology. So to finish off the story, as it happens, and in the UK, this is a little tip for you. I don't know if it's the same elsewhere in the world, but if you buy a Office 365 license, it's actually about 15% cheaper to buy the code on Amazon and drop it into your Microsoft account than it is to buy from Microsoft directly. So I have no idea why that would be the case. If you know the answer, please let me know. And Fred had basically been logged in and on the wrong email address, the wrong login credentials for his Office 365 account, pasted in the code I'd sent him, and as a result had activated a completely different account and effectively shut down his old one because it had expired. So a mere 2 hours later, after a Microsoft chat, and I shall be sending them a copy of the Helpdesk Habits book, I managed to get things resolved. They revoked the license and so on. But this presentation is about just those issues. Now, I know that you, as a IT support organization, as an MSP, any form of customer service really, you're not involved in saving and looking after personal artifacts, if you like. I'm sure you are unofficially for friends and relatives. That's a different matter. But actually, your business is all about enabling livelihoods. It's just the same sort of thing. It may not be personal artifacts, but it's about livelihoods. You are allowing people to trade, to do business, to earn money. And it's not that IT support basket that we tend to put things in. It's actually so much more than that. We're dealing with other humans. Those human-to-human interactions are what is so important. And the phrase that I guess I've coined throughout the online program and the book is all about human customer service. And for these next 30 minutes or so, I just want you to put the technology aside. I want you to forget about the AI, the bots, and all the rest of it. They all have their place to a certain extent. But I want you to think carefully now about this human-to-human interaction and the human elements within your organization, and how I hope you can start to improve those, because they can really make a difference to your business. So, my background briefly, I started in customer service around about the age of 15 when I ran a mobile disco business. And you may say, Mark, what's that got to do with customer service? Well, the reason it's got to do with customer service is that at midnight, when someone is screaming in your ear to play a particular record and you don't have it, you have to learn the art of empathy and tact and dealing with customers. I put customers in quotes there. Because actually, 30 years ago, believe it or not, it wasn't possible to have every single record ever made in the palm of your hand. What you're seeing on screen right now is a vinyl record. And if you're not sure what that is, ask your parents. From there, I moved into small business, and I set up and sold on a couple of marketing agencies. I got into the world of video and learned huge amounts about how small business deals with corporate customers. And again, customer service very much at the fore, and how you interact with those often very stressed people within those corporate organizations. But it wasn't until 2010 where I really got my degree, my master's in customer service, when I co-founded Customer Thermometer, the still very awesome one-click email survey SaaS tool, which is still really going great guns today. I exited Customer Thermometer in April of 2018, so I'm no longer part of the business, but it still is very much inside me. I'm still very close to the people that are there. For the first 3 years of my career there, I was the help desk. That was my role, really, and we made a conscious decision very, very early on to excel and differentiate with the human-to-human interactions that we were going to be having. We weren't just going to be a faceless software organization. We were actually going to truly go the extra mile to give that 110%. I know it sounds like a cliche, but actually we made a very conscious effort to strike up relationships with customers as opposed to behaving in a kind of robotic ticket type way. And believe me when I say it really worked. We really differentiated ourselves as a business, and with all other things being equal, as more competitors came into the marketplace, people would come back and buy from us time and time again and refer us as a team of people and our software because of the way we interacted with customers. So it really, really does work. Beyond that first 3 years, I then really focused on the sales side of the business, and had conversations with hundreds of MSPs, IT support organizations, customer service organizations, both virtually and face-to-face around the world. And this is me after a particular conference. You know how that feels, I'm sure. And as I delve more, as I talk to more and more of these organizations, I found it incredibly interesting that actually not everybody does this human customer support naturally. Actually, sometimes quite the opposite. It's just not inbuilt in so many people. It's not a natural behavior, and that made me curious. I tried to figure out why that was the case, and the conclusion I've come to is that it's simply because when you hire a technical support person, they're expert in what they do. They're expert in a particular field of technology, but they're just not trained. They've not been shown the way when it comes to human customer service and dealing with customers generally. In the same way, I've never been trained to deploy a Docker container in Kubernetes using a constant integration pipeline. And yes, I was reading that out on a piece of paper. So it's the same. I've not been shown how to do that, and people on the front line of help desk quite often haven't been shown how to deal with customers, the best sort of ways of creating those relationships, and so on. I then have to ask the question of you, why would you do this? Why would you put so much emphasis and effort on creating the right ethos, and ensuring that your team is putting that huge value onto human customer service, that they consistently do and say and write the right things. Why would you do that? Why not just, perhaps carry on and not worry about those sorts of things so much? And my answer to you is this, is because it will take your business into a different dimension. You will differentiate, because so many businesses do this so badly. So many businesses lack those empathy skills, that human to human interaction that just makes you smile, creating those little moments. And it's just like we did with Customer Thermometer. It makes such a difference. And not only will your customer retention and engagement increase, but your employee engagement and retention will also improve, because your team will enjoy being part of a company with this sort of ethos. So it's quite possible that your company doesn't excel at these sorts of things at the moment. It may be okay, but it's quite possible that these sorts of conversations go on. And this is a brief chat transcript I had with a t-shirt company just before I gave this presentation for the first time at IT Connect Global in Las Vegas in May of 2019, the Kaseya conference, which is brilliant. I wanted a nice branded t-shirt with Helpdesk Superhero on it. I'd been let down by a supplier, and I went to another supplier that claimed it would be a next day dispatch and everything would be fine. So I got on the chat, because guess what, it hadn't arrived next day, just to find out what was going on. And this is the sort of response that a Helpdesk superhero would give, the sort of response that I would give. There would be empathy, and I'd sort of take into account the question that had just been asked on the chat. But unfortunately, Emily appeared to have got out of bed the wrong way and basically pasted in a templated sentence, I suspect. So I was a little bit peeved about this, if I'm honest, and I pointed out the fact that, hang on a second, you're guaranteeing to dispatch the order today, which was the day before, and so I asked if I'd be receiving a £10 voucher at the very least, because that's what they promised. And again, this is a sort of helpdesk hero response I would expect. We would be making an excuse perhaps. There was some terms and conditions there which I hadn't spotted, but you know what? I'm going to make it right anyway. You can probably guess what's coming next. Emily wasn't so empathetic. This was what she pasted into the window, which again, I'm thinking may have been templated. So at this point, yeah, I rolled. I was pretty cross, actually. And she's then basically asking me to send me a screenshot of my order confirmation because I was actually claiming that this wasn't the case. So translated, it's basically this. She doesn't believe me, I'm really having a bad day, and she wants me to broadcast these messages to the world. I'm not going to mention the t-shirt company, that would be unfair, but Emily will stay with me forever, and so on, the conversation went on. So, she wasn't rude, but she was unhelpful. She showed absolutely no empathy, and I actually ended up telling the story at a conference because I was so cross about it. So I won't be ordering for them again. And these guys would have they would have spent all sorts of money on their pay-per-click to get me to buy that t-shirt in the first place. It actually turned up 3 days after I'd left the country to give the presentation. So all in all, it was a bit of a waste of £20. So if you don't believe me, let's look at the analysts. What do the analysts say about this sort of human-to-human interactions and the importance of agents just doing the right thing and really engaging with their customers? You can see the stats on screen right now. You can prove anything with statistics, of course you can. However, I'm struggling to see anybody that would disagree with this concept of making sure that you, as an agent, that person on the front line, really take charge of those interactions. To throw something else in here, in Salesforce's State of Service report, which was dated February 2019, they interviewed 3,500 agents, so a big sample, and a massive 71% of those agents said that their job was more strategic than it was 2 years previously. So by strategic, they will be talking about creating relationships, about potentially asking for referrals, upselling, cross-selling, and so on and so on. Generally being more than that sort of question and answer machine. They've been pushed to do more things when they have a customer on the email, on the chat, or on the phone. So if that is the case, people are needing to be more strategic, how do we make sure that that person has the right skills in place? Because we now know you can't rely on this happening naturally. So here's a little graph. This is what you can do. You can send your agents onto a training course, run some lunchtime seminars, get a consultant in, which is great. And they retain a load of stuff and they go back to work. And then this happens. Over time, the impact of that training just drops off. And the reason for that is because it's not been embedded properly. Okay, it's been a one-off hit, or maybe spread over a couple of weeks, whatever it may be, and people nod saliently during those sessions and go back and go, okay, yeah, we're gonna put some of this stuff into place. But eventually, we fall back on what we know because we have not turned this into a set of habits. Okay, if you start to embed these things as habits, then you start to see change. But there's some science behind this, and I want to get into this now. Let's have a little look at what makes all this stuff work or not work, as the case may be. And change is hard. We all know this, both in your personal life, whether you're trying to cut back on smoking or drinking, or you want to be going to the gym more or eating more healthily, whatever it is. We all know how hard that can be, particularly when temptation is put in front of you. And in business as well, we also see problems with how do you make change? How do you change culture? How do you change people to shift into a different direction? And the orange highlighted thing you see on screen right there now is the reason this change is so hard. This part of the brain has been inside us for hundreds of thousands of years. It's not recently evolved. It's been around for a while. But it's only really been understood for the last 30 or so years. And it's called the basal, or basal if being English, basal ganglia. Okay, that part of the brain, the basal ganglia. And think of it as the brain's autopilot. It's where all of the repetitive processes and day-to-day tasks which you perform naturally are stored. It's the little autopilot inside the brain, so that the reason for it is because the brain is incredibly efficient and it wants to maximize how it's used. And so it puts into the basal ganglia the most important or the most used and repetitive task. And habits are effectively stored in here, both good and bad. The brain doesn't know if it's a good habit or not. But the little routines, the things that you fall back on, the things that you do, which, if you think back to that graph, the reason you fall back on what you know is because it hasn't been embedded in this autopilot mode inside your basal ganglia. Okay, so it's efficiencies. If the brain shrinks this stuff right down and stores it all in one place, it allows the rest of the brain to be on alert, to be worried about whether woolly mammoths are coming along and you have to defend yourself. Or perhaps, to bring that up to date, to give you another example, think about, this is my journey to work, okay? I live in a very beautiful part of the UK. And if you get in the car every morning, you put your seatbelt on, you've opened the door before that, you've unlocked the car, you've put your seatbelt on, you've put the key in ignition or you've pressed an ignition button, you've reversed out of your drive, you've used your mirrors, the indicators, and I'm telling you, 5 minutes up the road, you won't remember any of that. You will completely forget all of those, perhaps hundreds of tiny little routines that you performed, because your basal ganglia has taken over and it's performed a whole set of tasks without you really realizing. That moment where you don't look back to find out where the seatbelt is, you don't look down to see where the clip for the seatbelt goes. You know where it is instinctively, and that's because you've done it hundreds and hundreds of times, and the brain has remembered, the basal ganglia has remembered where that seatbelt is without you having to even look for it. If you carry on the analogy, as you head down the road, on the motorway, the freeway, you set your cruise control. Okay, again, typically you won't look down, you know where those buttons are. And to prove the point, if you own two cars and you take the other car you don't normally drive and you're 10 minutes down the road, you go to set the cruise control, chances are you end up turning up the volume on the radio because the controls are in a different position. If you're anything like me, that's what you do. Okay, so they're both great examples of those little routines and habits that are stored in that particular part of the brain. Now, the great news here is that once you understand how this works, you can break into it and you can make change, you can add things, you can take away things. But unless it's stored in that part of your brain, then that change is very, very unlikely to happen. So let's have a look at what this science is. And it's called a habit loop. And it's formed of 4 different elements. And you need to be aware of all 4 in order to be able to control that habit loop and make change. So it starts with a cue or a trigger. So if we take an example, it's 11 o'clock. There's your cue. It's coffee time. Okay, which moves on to a routine. So you go to the kitchen area, or if you're at home, into your own kitchen, and you make yourself a cup of coffee, whether you boil the kettle or whatever you do, or reach for the coffee machine. But at the same time, you reach up, you open the cupboard door, you get out a jar, and you take out a biscuit, a cookie, and you place that next to your cup of coffee, jar back in, and close the cupboard door. That is your cue and routine. That happens every day, because you've been doing it for months, if not years. That is not yet a habit loop, because obviously it's just 2 elements. In order for this to stick, though, and the reason that you go about doing this every single day at 11 o'clock is because there has to be a reward associated with the routine you've just performed. Now, in this case, the reward is a sweet treat. Coffee, biscuit, cookie, they all go together very nicely. And if you do this enough times, you end up with a craving for it. Oh, excellent, it's 11 o'clock, that means I get to have a biscuit. And actually, if you do that for 70 days, 70, on average, a habit loop forms and you've got yourself a habit. You do that for 3 or 4 days, there's no habit. Another example for you, for me, I know you can't see me at the minute. If you could see me, you'd see I have an amazing 6-pack and a ripped body. Maybe not quite true, but the reason for that attempt at that, at least, is a few years back I made a very conscious effort to go to the gym every day, certainly during the week. I was going in the evenings, just sort of 5-6 o'clock, and eventually it was starting to disrupt the family time in the evenings with cooking dinner and picking up children and all the rest of it. So I was kind of forced to move my gym routine to the morning, which for me was as tough as it gets because I just wasn't programmed to work that way. But I had no choice. And for the first few days and weeks, I got out of bed and it was hard, and I tried to have breakfast and I tried to get in the gym, and it just became a really hard thing. But eventually, because I practiced it, and the reward for me was, long-term health and all the rest of it, I made sure that my cue, getting out of bed every morning, my routine is to put my gym stuff on. Once you've done that, you can't not go. You have to go. And eventually, and I'm in this situation now, if I don't go to the gym first thing in the morning, I feel terrible about the whole situation. Okay, so there is a brilliant example of how you can get into that habit loop and make a very conscious change. So, if we bring all this back to business, the great news is we've seen why it's so important to put a focus on this human side of your business. We've seen how to make this behavioural change, to get this to happen. Let's now have a look at what we can do to make these changes. And the great news is that there is a handy little guide with 50 habits in, with Helpdesk Habits that I have written, as you see on screen right now. And for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to take you through some examples from the book and elsewhere that you can take away, you can take and literally start using the minute you finish watching this. Okay, it's very practical, and I really encourage you, and hopefully will inspire you to go and make change in the next hour if you possibly can. Now, before I delve into the book, I want to give you another quick sort of bonus habit, if you like. One of my roles here in the UK is I advise a couple of MSPs. One of them, as you see on screen right now, the best Linux support guys you'll know, they're geniuses. They need a bit of help with their sales and marketing, and that's what I've been doing with them. And talking to some of their team, one of the things we were noticing is that their help desk staff are quite young, and they were having good conversations with customers, but they would they would just have that conversation, and it would sort of peter out. It would sort of end. So a customer will say, we've got this server, it's creaking a bit, it's about to go end of life, we really need to move it, we need to swap it out to the cloud, or whatever we need to do. And the help desk agent would just go, yeah, no, definitely, yeah, great, okay, thanks, all right, we'll speak to you soon, and put the phone down. And through one very, very simple change, we kind of worked out that if we encourage these folks to close that conversation off with this very simple phrase, shall I book that job in for you, that actually it would really close things down. And what happened was that a customer would then sort of go silent on the other end of the phone as they sort of realise they've now got to spend some money, but then they'd actually go, yeah, no, okay, let's do this in 2 weeks' time, because actually they needed the pain to be taken away. They just needed to be closed down, and we've all been in situations like that. So what you're looking at on screen actually is an actual desktop wallpaper which we produced, which was sitting on everybody's desktops as a constant reminder to get into the habit of using that phrase. Okay, not complicated. We were asking people to do 20 different things, one thing. And that started to change behaviors because new habits were formed. It really did work. So that's a great example of something I've seen working out in the field, if you like. But let me come on to the 5 examples from the book and the online course, which is split across those 5 particular areas. It's a pyramid because I really feel you have to build each one of those layers before you can sort of reach the top, if you like. So we'll take one from each of those layers. And the first one, I was about to say, is one of my favourites. If I'm honest, they're all my favourites. They're all really handy, helpful business things, I believe, when I was pointed them out. Or I should say, when they were pointed out to me. So the first one is the service recovery paradox. And as it says on screen, and these are all desktop wallpapers from the helpdeskhabits.com program. But solve a problem well, your customer will become more loyal over time. So what do we mean by this? And we're going to look at it graphically. Things go wrong in business. Okay, it happens all the time, and that's just the way things are. Nobody is perfect. No situation is perfect. So if you have a normal customer relationship over time, customers are they're happy. You see the loyalty go up over time. It might be more linear than that, whatever it may be. But typically, loyalty will increase over time. If, however, something goes wrong, badly wrong, with or for a customer, then this is the sort of curve that you will see happen. So as you can see, we've got a big dip in loyalty as something has gone wrong. But actually, if you as an organization, you as an agent, have solved that situation brilliantly, then what you'll see over time is that customers will become more loyal to you than if there hadn't been a problem in the first place. Okay. The reason for this, people will become indebted to you if you get them out of a problem. Now, even if you've caused the problem in the first place, they will still be incredibly relieved and grateful that you fixed it, and you fixed it well. Now, I've seen this happening in real life back in very, very early days, the first 3 or 4 months of Customer Thermometer. So we're talking 9 years ago, back in 2010. We had a big service failure with a large corporate client. And I literally wanted the ground to swallow me up one afternoon when I got a phone call, because they'd done something with the service we'd never thought possible, hadn't been tested for it, and all the rest of it. So what we did, rather than running away, was to put the best remedial report together they'd ever seen, and I'm quoting from them, and generally just worked tirelessly to make things right. And 8 years on, when I left the organisation, they were still, this FTSE 100 organisation was still pretty much the biggest customer that we had. So the habit really is to accept that stuff goes wrong, not to just head home and go, you know what, this one's gone, there's nothing we can do about it, but to actually dig in, make it right, make it really right, and you will see huge success with that particular customer over time. Second habit for you just to think about, which at first glance seems really small, and that's the beauty of all of these habits. They're small, but if you layer them on, if you compound them over time, then you will see tremendous results. This one I call lay it out, and if you're writing tickets all the time, It's very easy to write reams of text and run paragraphs together and make it all a little bit amorphous. If you just take a moment to look back at that ticket before you hit the send button and think about your end customer who is possibly running for a train, that's almost certainly on their mobile device, the text is small, they just need an answer, to take that step back and think about how you could lay that out, how you could spend 30 seconds putting some carriage returns in, separating your answers if there's perhaps multiple questions in there, use some bullets, use some italics or some underlining even, just to, as it says there, make it easy on the eye. And again, I don't make any apologies for this is small. This isn't going to change your business overnight. However, what it will do, if you do this consistently across your organization, is create an amazing impression over time. It shows you take care over how you deal with your customers. If you're taking care with this sort of thing, imagine the impression you're giving about the bigger stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So get into the habit of laying it out. Here's another one. Here's a third or fourth habit even for you around being forensic and solving the right problem. And an example I'll give you here is actually we've heard from about my father-in-law at the beginning of this session. Let me talk about my own father just for a moment, who's the perfect IT customer, and he's a struggle when it comes to IT. But I will always do what I can to help. He called me up recently. He said, "Mark, I need some Excel courses. Can you send me some Excel courses?" And I'll be honest, I didn't think he actually knew what Excel was all about. And so, yes, I could have just sent him a bunch of links, and maybe even earned some affiliate revenue from doing that. I don't know. But that wasn't the right thing to do. So I just took a pause and said, "Right, Dad, what is it? Why? Why are you looking for Excel courses?" And it turned out he was looking to edit a PDF form that had been created in Excel for a new charitable venture he's part of, because the form wasn't very clear and very good. So I sort of stepped right back and explained to him, how the relationship between Excel and Word and PDF works and how forms work and so on, and sent him some completely different articles alongside an Excel course, which may have been useful. But the Excel course is not what he wanted. But he didn't know that. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't aware that's not what he wanted. So be forensic, ask more questions, and you will solve the right problem, perhaps not the one that your client is coming to you with, because they don't always know what the right questions are to ask in the first place. So this is a favourite of mine. So they're all favourites. This is a particular favourite around feedback. And when was the last time you harvested a quote or a testimonial? So again, this is a desktop wallpaper as a reminder. If you're sat on, your help desk, let me just let that really sink in. Let me really get to grips with this. And it's this simple. Your help desk, your ticketing system archive is almost certainly a goldmine of marketing material. I almost guarantee it. And what I mean by that is the chances are you'll have dozens or hundreds even of tickets inside there where somebody has written a throwaway comment just to say, "Hey, you guys are great. You've got me out of a real problem here. I absolutely love what you do. Thank you so much." Now, to an untrained eye, great. You might feel good about it. Hit close ticket. Let's move on to the next one. However, wouldn't it be amazing if actually you got into the habit of grabbing that paragraph or that sentence and sending it on to whoever's nominated in your team, so that can then be formed as a quote, can go back to that customer and say, "Look, could we use that? Could we put your name against it? Could we display it on our website? Or could we turn this into a wider testimonial? Could we maybe do a quick video with you or a quick interview?" And before you know it, you've got marketing gold from absolutely nothing, because most people are all too delighted to help with providing testimonials. Most people want to be part of a success. And back in my customer thermometer days, if you look right now at customerthermometer.com and look at the happy customers page, my goal with it was always to have this enormous wall of positivity, almost overwhelming, with a number of quotes and testimonials on there, so that when people were checking us out, they couldn't fail to see how great we were as a business. And so many of those actually just came from tickets. So that the work was almost done for us, and we needed to just sort of channel it essentially. Now, I did a very, very quick survey of some of the bottom of the MSP 501, and I'll just flash them up on screen right now. I've blurred out the names, but about 50% of the 10 or 20 I looked at had absolutely no reference to customer testimonials or quotes or case studies, which I found incredible, because actually it's the first thing you want to see as a prospect, as a potential new customer, to see that you're known, you're liked, you're trusted by somebody else. So don't be guilty of that, okay? Harness those quotes, reap those testimonials, and you will not regret it, that's for sure. So almost time to wrap things up. I'm going to give you one more habit to get into, and this, this is something I've practiced for maybe 15 years, revolutionize with video. And it never fails to amaze me just how amazed people are when they receive a personalized video from me, or when I hear about from other people using this technique. And it's very simple. It's very easy, particularly Helpdesk environment, and you start writing a response to someone where you say you need to open up a browser, you need to click top right and follow this, and then open up a command prompt and all the rest of it. And before you know, you've written 2 or 3 paragraphs. And the habit I want you to consider is, when you start to go down that route, to think about whether video would be more appropriate. Okay. Could you use a simple screen cam, perhaps with you voicing over, just like I'm doing here, to illustrate a point, to demonstrate a process, to show how to do something to a customer, and actually, to talk to them. So for whatever you might be using, might be remote access into their setup, so you're showing them their stuff. So it's very, very personal. Once it's recorded, you can perhaps attach it. You need to upload it somewhere, of course, perhaps attach it somehow via a link to the ticket. Or the other thing you can do is use your own company's website. Again, have a little process in place, perhaps a VIP folder within your domain there, and then / the customer's name. So VIP /David-Smith, for example. Quick WordPress page. Dear David, here's an explanation for you. Embed the video. Best wishes from Mark. Now, you can also extend that and use that in a sales cycle, whether proposals are going backwards or forwards, or just to send a customer something which is helpful and useful. Getting into the habit of using video is extraordinary, and as I say, it's something I have been doing for years, and to this day, as I'm recording this in 2019, people are still amazed. But actually, if you get it right, you get the process right, you get the software right, then it's actually often quicker to do that than it is to write it up in the first place. So that, I've talked about this before, but creating the right impression with customers, making people go, wow, that's remarkable. Creating those little moments that really matter and really stand out will get you noticed, will get you referred, will ensure you get retained or win new business as well, because people want to do business with people. I'm going to finish off now with a little summary, and this is what I want you to be thinking about today. I want you to be humanizing your business. I want you to think about Fred. I want you to think about human support, human customer service, rather than IT support. Okay, you're enabling livelihoods in the businesses that you're in. So just have that different perspective on it. Remember that you're dealing with those human-to-human interactions. Perhaps put a little more focus on them if they've been lacking. And if they haven't been lacking, then work out ways of making it even better, because you will get referred, you will retain more customers if you do that. Think about what I've been talking about with habit loops. Habitize isn't really a word, but it goes well with humanize, doesn't it? And think about those habit loops. Now you know how to break into them. You know how to make change. But if you personally, take it personal as well, but also, of course, from a business perspective. So think about how you can take some habits, use the book, use the online program even, to think about how you can do that. Okay, what's most relevant and pertinent to your business. And then thirdly, which really isn't a word, practicize, is to remember that 70 days it takes to form a habit. Okay, so This stuff isn't going to happen overnight, but if you get consistent, the way you write, the way things you say, what you do across your organization, then you're going to see a real difference. If you need some help with any of this stuff, you can take a look at helpdeskhabits.com. Of course, you'll find the book and the ebook, but also the online program as well, where there are 60 videos, 4.5 hours worth of content, which are all based on the book. People learn in different ways. And alongside that, 70 odd desktop wallpapers for that embed. Okay, so we've got the videos and the books for the learning, but the embedding is just as important. So as I say, desktop wallpapers, we have merchandise to buy with wall art, framed or otherwise, even very nice hoodies, polo shirts, t-shirts and the like, mugs, you name it, to refresh people's memories, to really remind them of what they're trying to achieve. So you can take a look at that. You can grab a trial and see what you think to the program. So with that, I wish you well. I hope you're able to really focus on that human customer service, because you will see a huge difference in your business.